Hey folks, welcome back. My name is Cyrus Davis, and today we are going to be doing a set review of Journey Together, which is our next set coming out. Prismatic Evolution just came out and is hot on the scene right now. Everyone's playing the new set. I just released a tier list video on that the other day. But now I'm going to look towards the future. Rotation is coming up in a few months, and Journey Together will be the first new set we get with rotation. So when rotation happens, Journey Together will be legal. When Journey Together is legal, rotation will have happened. So we will be reviewing the set in the context of a post-rotation format, which is looking like Dragapult and Charizard and Raging Bolt are going to be probably the strongest decks coming out of that, based on Japanese results so far, with like some decks that counter that, like Walls decks like Melodic and Cornerstone. Also seeing quite a bit of play in Japan. So that is the context in which I will be reviewing this set. I actually tried to review this a couple of weeks ago. My audio cut out, so I have seen these cards, and I will be re-reviewing it here. But without further ado, let's just get right into it. I'm looking at this through the Justin Basil website, so I just want to give them a shout out. JustinBasil.com is where I am getting all of my translations here. And I'm going to skip through a lot of the cards that just like clearly aren't good, you know, like this Caterpie, Butterfree, 60 times, one grass, 60 damage for each heads you flip on 4 coin flips, 2 or more heads your opponent's act opponent's paralyzed. Attacks like that, obviously not good, so I'm just going to be scrolling through. If I don't talk about a card, you can assume it's probably pretty bad, because I will be mentioning even just like the decent cards here. So we'll start with this Lilligant. Your Grass and Fire Pokemon attack 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Now, this is historically a pretty good ability. This was on a Lurantis, I believe, a while ago, back in the Sun and Moon era. And the Lurantis saw some day twos, never won anything big, but this can be good math fixing for Fire and Grass Pokemon if they're doing just a little bit damage short. So I wouldn't write this card off. I think this is a card that you should have in your binder. I'd pick up a 4/4 line of this. I'll go back over everything that you should have in your buy list. Actually, I'll just put it in the description below, what cards I think that you should have on your buy list. This will be a fully comprehensive buy list, so I don't think Lilligant is going to stand out in anything right away. I don't have a deck in mind for this currently, but in the future, we could, with new cards, this could definitely be a better card that could get some more use. Being able to boost your damage is always good. There could be some attacks on a popular Pokemon later down the line that are just like 20 damage short of, the 320, 330 mark. Not good things like Dragapult and Charizard, where Lilligant could fix that math for you. Then we have this Maractus. If this Pokemon's in the active spot and knocked out by damage from an attack, put 6 damage counters in the attacking Pokemon, so not terrible ability, but the attack is actually kind of decent. 20 damage during your next turn, the defending Pokemon can't retreat, so obviously we all know attacks that prevent your opponent from retreating are very good. Mawile has been a fantastic card in our current format, and formats before it, and the fact that your opponent will, if they break the retreat lock and knock this out, they will take some damage, could also be very relevant if you're playing this in a deck that likes to attack, and maybe that fixes some math for you. Now, the fact that it does 20 damage while blocking the retreat, similar to Sob on Wellspring Mask Ogerpon EX, is not great, because it means that if you're trying to trap something forever, you will eventually have to knock it out. There's no like Radiant Alexian to move the damage anymore. There's no double turbo energy to reduce your damage to 0 anymore. So that is definitely a big detriment to these retreat lock attacks that do a little bit of damage, is that you might not be able to trap something forever. So this definitely could hurt it and make it a much less playable card. Mungus EX is terrible. So Aegislash doesn't have anything going for it. Skip through here. Meowscarada, let's see. Once during your turn, you may use this ability. It's Pokemon that bench with your active Pokemon, if it's an EX. So 180 for 2 colorless isn't bad, but I mean, the HP is just so frail. 180 is fine, but it's not enough to make this a relevant card at all. During Pokemon checkup, 3 more damage counters on your opponent's burn Pokemon. So, similarly to the Lurantis, this could be the Lilligant. This could be a card that if there was a good Pokemon that had an attack that burned, it could be good to boost that burn damage. by 3, you know, just an extra 30 damage to your attacks basically at that point. But if there was, that'd probably be a fire type Pokemon, so it'd probably be better just to play the Lilligant. I can't imagine, I wouldn't recommend picking up Magmortar the same way that I would recommend picking up Lilligant for a binder if you just want to sort of own everything that's decent in the set. I don't think the Magmortar is likely to ever see any play. Next, we have Blaziken EX. So this is actually the next card in here that I think is actually kind of solid. Once during your turn, you may attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. So that already, in and of itself, is a pretty powerful ability. Any basic energy to any of your Pokemon. So this is just good acceleration in any deck. And then for 1 fire, 1 colorless, very cheap, 200 damage during your next turn's Pokemon can't attack. 320 HP, because this is stage 2 EX, is relatively bulky. Low attack cost, meaning that it's very easy to keep setting this up, especially with the ability. So this has great synergy with Turo. I actually think this card is pretty solid. I know some people have been playing this in Mamoswine EX, which is a card we'll talk about later, because Mamoswine EX doesn't have any... It's like the best form of energy acceleration in the deck, and then it gives you an alternate attacker. So I actually think, you know, if you want... if you want to pick up everything that's decent in the set, that you actually should pick up a 4/3/3 line of Blaziken EX just in case it ends up being a viable card. But... right off the bat, I don't think that this card is going to be like a top tier contender or anything. But I do think that this has definitely a lot of potential and could see some play with the Mamoswine. Next, we have Darmanitan. Now, I actually think, this is the first Trainers Pokemon that we're talking about. I think that all the Trainer decks have potential. I think they're all worth giving a try and trying to build decks with. I think that the Ends deck is probably the best one. This Darmanitan, a big part of why. For 2 colorless, 30 times the amount of energy in your opponent's discard pile, so this can be really good against decks that play a lot of energy, like Ceruledge. And it's very splashable attack for 2 colorless, very easy to use. And then Darmanican, 90 damage, discard all energy from this Pokemon. You're usually going to be copying this with Zoroark. So 90 damage to the active, 90 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Similar to Moonlight Shuriken, not quite as strong because it has to hit the active. It cannot hit 2 bench Pokemon, but still very good and a great attack to copy with Zoroark, especially with the energy acceleration support that Zoroark has. Very easy to just discard 2 dark energy for this attack and then set up another Zoroark on the next turn. So you can use Darmanitan multiple times. Manaphy is rotating, so we don't have that to stop it. So against things like Dragapult and Charizard, which are looking to be very popular, this is definitely, a very, very powerful tool to have to take 2 price turns against them, especially in the early game where you can sort of dismantle their setup a little bit with it. Reshiram EX, no good with that 200 damage for 3 energy attack on a low HP EX. Volcanion EX, so obviously this once during your turn, as a Pokemon is in your active spot, you may make your opponent's active Pokemon burned. This has some synergy with the Magmortar. I still don't think that makes the Magmortar any playable at all, but I actually think, you could maybe pick up a single copy of Volcanion EX, because especially with Latias EX, giving it free retreat, if you just play the Volcanion EX as just a one-of in a big basics deck, you leave it on your bench, your active Pokemon gets knocked out, you bring up Volcanion, you start the turn, or, you just, whatever you want to attack into, you go ahead and quickly burn it before you retreat with Latias EX into whatever you actually want to attack with, right? So the burn is always going to be like an extra 20 damage, just to whatever attack you want to use, basically. Similarly to, Toxic Powder, Sneasler combo, and Brute Bonnet, but this is just, it's a 1-card, free 20 damage that you get to do to your opponent's Pokemon. So I actually think this card is pretty good with Latias EX. I think that it doesn't really have a good home yet. I think that, Raging Bolt, the best big basics deck, and I think because of Raging Bolt's infinite damage output, you don't necessarily need this extra 20 most of the time, but it could be relevant. I mean, Raging Bolt has a pretty easy time getting 3 energy on the board to 210, but maybe it's slightly harder to get that 4th energy into play, although it's probably still going to be better to get that 4th energy into play some other way, so that rather than just doing 20 with burn. This Ludicolo I actually think is pretty solid as well. I'm going to recommend picking up maybe a 3-1-2 line of this. In a deck that already plays Rare Candy, boosting your Pokemon's HP by 40 is actually really good. Your opponent doesn't want to target this down because it only gives out one prize card, and they'd much rather be hitting into your 2-prize Pokemon, right? So if you're playing Charizard or Dragapult and are able to get out of Ludicolo, I mean, it's very tough for something to deal with 330 and 320 already. So if you're boosting that up to 360 and 370, like you're just putting those Pokemon confidently out of one-shot range against almost anything. This card I think is very underrated. I haven't really seen many people talking about it, and I think it actually could have a place in our metagame. Next we have this Wailord. Now, I don't think this card is going to be very good, but probably worth picking up a 4/4 line for the binder. You can partner this with Baxcalibur, and it's a single prize attacker that, it does 10 damage plus 15 more damage for each 1 energy attached to it, which means with a 4 energy attack cost, it's a minimum of 210 damage, and then, up to 7, you're one-shotting basically anything. Now, it's hard to get 7 energy on a Pokemon, much harder even to get 7 energy onto multiple Wailords over the course of the game, but you only need to attack with it 3 times. You have Spirit Energy Retrieval and regular Energy Retrieval if you want it. You have Vessels, and obviously you have Baxcalibur to accelerate the energy, so there could be some sort of play here with, a high HP single prize Pokemon. It's actually like 240 HP, not that easy to knock out, and you can one-shot, Dragabolts and Charizards, so this definitely could be a decent deck, but my initial opinion is that, especially with something like Badoo in the format, making it much more difficult to set up the Baxcalibur, that this deck is not going to be that great, and I would not recommend putting your all into it. But if you just want to be able to build every deck, that's another card similar to the ones that we've talked about before, where it may not be immediately good in the metagame, but it might be worth picking up for the binder in case it ends up, I'm sure the card will be pretty cheap in case it ends up being viable. Next we have our first Iono's card. So this is the main attacker of the Iono's deck. Iono's Voltorb, 20 damage plus 20 more for each light energy attached to your Iono's Pokemon. The Iono's deck all synergizes around this Voltorb, getting a bunch of light energy into play and doing big damage with this single prize Voltorb. I think the deck is actually pretty solid. This damage can ramp up. It takes a while to ramp up, but you are a single price attacker, so you don't need to be one-shotting stuff right away. You can sort of just take a single prize knockout on something early game, and then by the end of the game, hopefully you're one-shotting things like Charizard and Dragapult. 70 HP is pretty low, which makes it not super great into Dragapult. But I do think that this card is good, and if you do want to play the Iono's deck, you are going to need 4 copies of Iono's Voltorb. Iono's Electrode, on the other hand, for 2 lightning, it knocks itself out, and you flip a coin. If it has your opponent's active Pokemon is also knocked out, this card is terrible. You're never going to want to risk just giving up a prize for nothing in order to potentially one-shot your opponent's Pokemon. It's not worth a deck spot. Should definitely be playing better cards in your deck. So, Voltorb, good. Electrode, you do not need. The only instance you might play Electrode is maybe if you were wanting to increase the HP of this and then play Relicanth. But I don't think that's very good. Ends Joltik. Crackling Short. 30 damage before doing damage. Discard all Pokemon tool cards from your opponent's active Pokemon. If you discard a Pokemon tool card in this way, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Paralysis is the best status condition. Maybe, kind of close with Poison, but I think that paralysis is probably the best status condition when it is easily used, and I think that this is a pretty easy way to use it. You just play a of this card in your End Zoroark deck. If your opponent has a Pokemon with a tool card attached, you can paralyze it if you want to. Things like Sparkling Crystal, still very popular, Rescue Board, and decks don't play a ton of switching cards. They might have already used their switching card. They may only play a Turo and have a tough time finding it. This can be a great way to buy time. Just get a free paralysis, a free 30 damage on your opponent's active Pokemon to soften it up for a future knockout. I definitely think this is worth including as a in any Ends deck. So, pick up 1 Ends Joltik. You don't need any more than that. Tapu Koko EX, I actually think this could be a pretty decent attacker in Miraidon EX. Does 20 more damage for each of your bench Pokemon if you're playing the Area 0 build of the deck still. This gets up to, 220 damage. So this is a good replacement for Raikou V. Obviously, it's not a V, so you don't get the Forest Seal Stone abuse ability. Forest Seal Stone gone as well. So that is not going to be a thing anymore. However, it does replace Raikou as sort of, a 2 energy attacker that can, one-shot other 2-price Pokemon. So I think as a cost-effective attacker in Red 90X, this could be a solid card. I would definitely pick up one. Next, we have Iono's Bellibolt EX. So this is a card that you should probably pick up a 4/4 line of. If you want to play the Iono's deck, you'll probably only play maybe a 3/3 line, but you might, in some lists, you might want to play a 4/4 for just to draw it more consistently. Since otherwise you have to search it out with Ultra Ball, you might just want to play a 4/4 and hope that way you can draw into it naturally more often. But I imagine this will be a 3/3. So this is very key. Allows you to attach as many basic lightning energy from your hand to your Iono's Pokemon as you like. It's a great form of energy acceleration. I've seen this played as its own Iono's deck with the Voltorb to boost Voltorb's damage output. And I've also seen this played just with Raging Bolt as a way to get a bunch of lightning energy into play and then discard them with Raging Bolt. So this is definitely a card worth picking up. I'm going to say I'm going to recommend only picking up a 3/3. You probably that is going to be enough. And then this attack isn't bad either. Obviously, 4 energy for 230 isn't great, but it's pretty easy to get those energy on. 230 is a good number to hit. That's knocking out most, non-evolved basic EXs. So 230, decent number. It's at least a okay attacker. It has some value as an attacker, but obviously the ability is what it's most here for. Definitely a solid card, both in the Raging Bolt build or the pure Iono's Voltorb build. Next, we have Iono's Kilowattrel. Now, this is definitely a card you want to pick up a 4/4 line of. You will probably play a 4/4 line in the pure Iono's deck. You must discard a base line energy from this Pokemon in order to use this ability. Once during your turn, you may draw a card until you have 6 cards in your hand. This stacks, so you can use multiple Kilowattrel over the course of the turn. If you have 3 Kilowattrel in play, you can draw up to 6 3 times during the turn. You can get energy onto them easily with the Bellibolt EX to discard. This is just an amazing draw engine for the Iono's deck and definitely will be a key to making that deck successful. Next, we have Lillie's Clefairy EX. So this is the first Lillie's card we're looking at. I think you're going to want to pick up 4 of these. The Lillie's deck relies on having a big bench full of Pokemon for this Full Moon Rondo attack. 20 damage plus 20 more for each bench Pokemon, both yours and your opponent's. And the weakness of Dragon Pokemon is now Psychic, so I don't think that'll be incredibly relevant. That's actually very relevant against Dragapult. But outside of Dragapult, obviously this won't do much, but this is huge in the Dragapult matchup. But Lillie's Clefairy EX is your main attacker here, and Lillie's Pearl we'll look at later, but it basically is the center of the Lillie's deck, so we have to talk about it now. It reduces the prizes given up by Lillie's Pokemon it's attached to by 1, so this is a single prize, 190 HP attacker. And you're doing, on your side, at max, 180 damage, and then, 20 more for each of your opponent's Pokemon, so hopefully, 200, 220. You're one-shotting Dragapults. Your Charizard matchup is probably going to be pretty bad, but at least you're throwing single-prize Pokemon at your opponent, so you do still have some play. You're not, trading a 2-prizer to 2-shot stuff. You are attacking with a pretty bulky 1-prizer, 190 HP, as long as you have that Lillie's Pearl attached. Mr. Mime, what does this card do again? Shuffle your hand to I can draw a card for each card in your, yeah, okay, this card's terrible. Okay, next decent card we have in here is Banette. I'm going to say you want to pick up probably a 2/2 line of this Banette. Actually, you just need 2 of the Banette. You don't need the Shuppet because the older Banette that is still in format, I believe, is better. The one that item locks on a flip. But Curse Speech, your opponent shuffles 3 cards from their hand into their deck. This has amazing synergy with 0/6 Machinations. This will definitely be a decent card in some sort of control build at some point. You just 0/6 your opponent down to 3, make them shuffle their whole hand into their deck, and then probably try to trap something, and then pivot into a different control attacker after that. So yeah, I think that Banette definitely has potential. I think that's definitely worth picking up. I think the fact that this can just lock your opponent down so quickly is very, very strong. Although immediately, probably won't see a ton of play right off the get-go, with Dragapult being the best second format since they have Recon Directive to refill their hand. Next we have End Sigilyph. So I do think that this is one of in the Ends deck. Basically, if you're used to the stack when you only have one prize card remaining, you win the game. This is just a nice and easy way to take your last prize card if you can't find something like a boss to take a knockout on something. The End Zoroark deck doesn't have a ton of great ways to take one-shots on things, especially things like Charizard and Dragapult. So the easiest way to take your last prize card a lot of the time probably will be this End Sigilyph attack. So I definitely think it is worth playing. Okay, next we have Oricorio. Color Family, decent attack, but definitely not too slow for this format, especially since you can just use something like Badoo instead. Now, you will want probably a 4/4 line, at least in the binder, for Lillie's Ribombee. For the Lillie's deck, when you place Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may have your opponent reveal their hand, put any number of basic Pokemon you find there onto their bench. So this helps you build up damage for Lillie's Clefairy. And the Lillie's deck already is reliant on filling the bench with Pokemon in order to start attacking in the first place. So just having more Lillie's Pokemon to put on the bench is never going to be a bad thing. Next we have Lillie's Comfey, Flower Call. So this is definitely a 4 in the deck. Search your deck for any number of basic Lillie's Pokemon and put them onto your bench. Then shuffle your deck. This is a fantastic attack. Just immediately fills your bench with Pokemon to boost the damage of Clefairy. This is going to be an amazing setup attack. You're going to want to use this pretty much every game, ideally, as the Lillie's deck. And Fade Out is a decent attack too. 30 damage, put this Pokemon and all card stats into your hand. You could play like a single copy of Mimikyu or something like that, and just continuously Fade Out into Mimikyu. That could be a decent line, hit and run line with the deck if you run your opponent out of boss and they don't have great Mimikyu outs. But generally speaking, this card is going to be a 4 in here just for Flower Call. You want to open it as much as possible. You want to use it every single game. And it just fills up more bench spots for Lily Clefairy. So. Next we have Mimikyu EX. Choose 2 of your opponent's Pokemon and put 3 damage counters on them. That's an alright attack, but I don't think that this is going to see any real play. Grimmsnarl, 50 damage for each colorless in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. I think it's a stage 2 with only 170 HP. It's a little bit too frail. You have to play another Pokemon to help, other cards to help boost your opponent's retreat cost as well. I don't think that this is going to be a very good deck either. Way too frail. On Crimmy X, once they're you may heal 30 damage from one of your Pokemon. I'd say that this is a decent pickup as a one of. You still have things like Bravery Charm in the format that you can put on this to make it harder to knock out. Oh, never mind. It's a stage 1, not a... I was thinking it was basic for a second there. As a stage 1, I think this probably is not very good. I was thinking as a basic, this could be an actually okay card, but... Next we have Mamoswine EX. So I'm going to recommend picking up a 4/4 line of this. You probably only need a 4/3/4, but 4/4/4 just in case, because of the way the deck functions. Mamoswine EX's ability says, once during your turn, you may search your deck for a Pokemon, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So, and then for 2 fighting, 180 plus 40 more for each stage 2 Pokemon on your bench. So you get 1 stage 2 Pokemon on your bench, you're already doing 220, you're already knocking out a lot of basic Pokemon EXs, that's fantastic. And obviously, and then once you get a full bench, you're doing at most, 380? 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, yeah. So if you get a full bench of stage 2s, it's probably not usually going to happen. Maybe 4 is probably what you're looking at end game to do 340, but that's still enough to one-shot basically anything. And this ability is super good for helping get that set up, which once you're in your turn, you make sure your deck for any Pokemon, reveal it, and put it in your hand. If you have multiple Mamoswine, you can use multiple of these Mammoth Carry abilities per turn. Helps you get lots of stage 2 Pokemon out, do lots of damage. So I think this is great early game pressure. And then great, late game potential, being able to one-shot anything. And it's very bulky itself. 340 HP, low attack cost, can play that Blaziken EX we looked at earlier to accelerate extra energy onto it. That way you can, Turo it with its 2 energy, attach for turn, accelerate 1 energy with Blaziken EX, nice and easy. So I think this card is actually fairly strong. I think the deck probably requires you to play a lot of you know, it's a lot of Pokemon, so it's always going to have some setup issues. You're not going to have enough room for exactly as many trainers as you want, exactly as many energies you want to make it more consistent, and that is going to be the key problem for the deck. But I think that once set up, this deck is a dump truck. Like, this is an amazing deck once set up. And if someone managed to build a good list of this could actually be a real meta contender. We'll look at this Lycanroc. I know that it's not very good from my memory, but when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may attach up to 2 Spike Energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon, and then it does 40 damage, plus 40 more for each damage counter your opponent's active Pokemon. So, the only way for you to get more damage onto your opponent's active Pokemon with this is the Spike Energy does damage to your opponent's active Pokemon when they attack into it. So, the fact that they have to attack into it for you to get the extra damage for Grabbing Fangs just makes the ability, like, really, really weak. The card just is not very good. You need to be, like, putting the damage, have a way to, like, force the damage onto your opponent's active Pokemon. They can just boss around your Spike Energy, right? And then you're doing nothing. Now, these are the first Hops Pokemon here. These are the worst ones. Search your deck for his damage card, reveal and put in your hand. Not for 20 damage. Now, there are ways to boost this damage, but not by that much. That makes not super great. And the Hops deck is going to functionally be best when playing, like, Metal Energy for the Hop Zacian. So I don't think this Hop Sandaconda line is really going to see any play. Now, this Toedscruel, I would recommend picking up one copy of this Toedscruel. Since the other Toedscruels already have some playability, that gives this Toedscruel more potential, since you can play Toedscruel and then one of this Toedscruel, one of the other Toedscruel, one of the Toedscruel EX, and have, you know, a few options with it. A few different powerful abilities. But this one does, as long as this Pokemon is on your bench, your opponent's active Pokemon tree cost is 2 less. So that's a pretty strong control ability, especially since the other Toedscruels are do also have some control properties to them. I think this card is pretty good. Increasing your opponent's active Pokemon tree cost by 2 is actually very, very strong. Yeah, this Koraidon is just like another bulk EX Pokemon. Same with this Clodsire. Does not do anything very relevant. Tyranitar. Now, I don't think Tyranitar is very good, unfortunately. I think that it's too frail. The item lock comes out too slow. Even if you have Badoo, I think the deck's just not doing that much. I think that it's pretty easy to set. Like, deck's already built to deal with Badoo, so that makes Tyranitar even worse. You know, it's... Badoo's early game item lock is very powerful, but, like, item lock into the mid to late game gets weaker as your opponent gets like things like Zoroark and Recon Directives into play, and just a lot more ways to draw cards. Pidgeot EX, the item lock just gets weaker once your opponent gets set up. The Badoo is good because it is useful during the setup phase, before your opponent has a bunch of draw abilities on the board. Tyranitar as a deck, I don't think is very great. But it had some potential. When this Pokemon is in the X spot, your opponent can't play an item card from their hand, does 150 and discards top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. So obviously the discard, you know, you could discard some important cards that, you know, just discarding random cards from your opponent's deck is always good. You always have the potential to discard just some really important stuff that your opponent needs to close out games. And Crackling Stomp is two-shotting most things, at least with a Defiance ban. You know, one of your attacks at Defiance ban, you're getting up to like 330. So it does have some potential in that sense, but I still think the deck is going to be too weak. But if you want to give it a try, you can play Tyranitar Badoo and pick up like a 4-3-4 line of this Tyranitar. Ends Purrloin. Pilfer. 20 damage, your opponent reveals their hand and you put a card you find there on the bottom of your deck. So you getting to choose this card means that, especially in combination with Iono, or even Judge, this is going to be a very disruptive attack, very powerful. I definitely think this is worth including as a one of in the Ends Zoroark deck, to try to disrupt your opponent, especially in the early game during the setup phase. You do a little bit of damage and sort of hand lock them a little bit. Sorry, it's supposed to be 30 damage. I don't know why it says 20 here. So yeah, I think there's something worth playing for the early game as Ends Zoroark. And Judge with this has so much synergy with the Ends Zoroark deck as well, just in general, because of the Zoroark having the trade ability, allowing you to draw lots of cards. So you're not hurt by Judge nearly as much as your opponent is. So then, speaking of Ends Zoroark, this is the main attacker of the Ends Zoroark deck. I'm going to recommend you pick up a 4-4 line of this. honestly, even if you're not planning on playing the Zoroark deck, if you just want to have this for other decks, because Trade is a fantastic ability. We've all seen how good of an ability Refinement is, but Burial is rotating, which is one of the other really good draw abilities in the format currently. Trade allows you to discard a card from your hand, draw 2 cards once per turn, but for each Zoroark EX you have in play. So this is going to be a great way to draw cards. I've already seen people playing this, just a heavy line of this in their Gardevoir EX decks, since they don't have Curly anymore. They're just like, I'll still play Curly and I'll just wear Canadian and might wear Ralts and Gardevoir EXs. So yeah, I think this is a fantastic ability. I think people should keep an eye out on using this card even in not Ends-based decks. But this does allow you to choose one of your bench Ends Pokemon. You can use copy that attack for 2 Dark Energy. So this just gives you access to all of the Ends attacks. This is the main attacker of the Ends deck. And it is honestly fairly strong. I think this is probably the best of the trainers decks off the get-go. Yeah, then we have a bunch more not so great attack Pokemon here. The Ends Cling Clang does flip 3 coins, 120 for each coin you flip on a stage 2, so that's not a card that you're going to want to play in the deck. Magearna, I am going to say that this is probably worth picking up a single copy of. The attack is like okay if you open it, just 20 damage, draw 2 cards, not bad. And as long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, whenever you attach an energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon, heal 9 damage from that Pokemon. So in combination with Latias EX, like we did with Volcanion, we can promote this at the beginning of our turn, attach to one of our bench Pokemon, heal 90 from it, and then get some use out of it. But the problem is that if you had something knocked out so that you can promote this at the beginning of your turn, then you probably don't have a Pokemon that has 90 damage on your bench. So it's a little awkward. I think this card is fairly weak. Probably won't see any play, but it's worth picking up one copy of for the binder, just in case. Next we have Hop Zacian EX. So if you want to play the Hops deck, you're going to want 4 of these. I've seen someone playing a combination of Hops with Dragapult EX, which looks like might be a decent way to play the Hops deck. But Close Cleave does 30 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon, 3 damage to one of their bench Pokemon for 1 colorless. With the other Hops cards, this damage can be boosted up to, I think, at max 120 to the active, and you can do it for 0 energy with the tool. So this is a decent attack, and then Brave Slash 240 during opponent's next turn. Pokemon can use Brave Slash. With the other damage boosters, this can be brought up to one-shot pretty much anything. I think you get up to, yeah, you can get up to like 330 damage. So yeah, with all of the modifiers, Brave Slash is doing tons of damage. I think this deck is okay, but honestly, it's not doing enough. It has a really tough Dragapult matchup, a really tough Charizard matchup, and I think that's too much for it already. Too much for it to be like super playable, with those looking like they're going to be 2 of the best decks in the format. I don't think your Raging Bolt matchup is very good either, so just not really competing with a lot of top decks right now. I thought this was going to be one of the best decks of the format when I first was looking at the Hops cards, and then I realized that Snorlax didn't stack. You could only boost your damage with 1 Snorlax. So that made the deck a lot worse. I think this could still be cute with the Dragapult. You play like a thin Zacian's line, you play the Tool, Zacian, a couple Snorlax, and then you use Close Cleave early game to take some knockouts and spread some damage on your opponent's bench, and then you finish off with Dragapult later in the game. But I think that Dragapult Dusknoir will probably still be the best way to play Dragapult. Salamence EX's attack cost is way too heavy. I do not think that this card is good at all. 5 energy for 300 damage, and discard 4 energy for 300 damage. I think it's just worse Charizard, honestly. Again, I'll talk about it because 20 damage, attach basic energy card from your discard to one of your bench Dragon Pokemon. That's like not the worst thing ever, but I don't think there's like a lot of great Dragon Pokemon that can benefit from that right now. Like I don't think it's good in Dragapult. You don't need any extra energy acceleration of Dragapult, and this is just like a 1 prizer that you don't need to be attacking with early game. You'd rather just be using like Badoo. Ends Reshiram, you will want to pick up 1 copy of this for the Ends deck. You can punish players for not for taking like a swing into your Zoroark without one-shotting it, and then go ahead and use Powerful Rage, 20 damage times 20. or 20 damage for each damage counter on you. So if your opponent swings into your Zoroark, you're usually going to be able to take a return knockout back if they don't one-shot your Zoroark. Also 170 damage. I think this is one of your stronger attacks that you can copy with and Zoroark, like as far as just like pure high end of damage output goes. So this can at least let you knock out some like things like Squawkabilly EX really easily. So you're definitely going to want one copy of this for the Zoroark deck, but other than that, this card, you do not need any more of it. Hop Snorlax. I'm going to say you probably just need 2 copies of this, since you can only use one at a time anyways, but it boosts the damage of all of your Hops Pokemon by 30. So that's just like, it's free damage. You're always going to want to play this with any Hops Pokemon. Just a free 30 damage, but putting this Pokemon on your bench is fantastic. Extra damage is always just amazing. This was what makes Zacian playable at all. And you definitely want to include a copy of these in any deck with Hops Pokemon in it. Then we have the Dudunsparce EX. Now, I actually think this card is kind of good. And the reason for that, I'm going to say you need 2 of them. But the reason that I actually think it's kind of good is because you can play with the other Dudunsparce, right? So the one that draws cards. Now, this is a cool draw engine, right? Like, you play, the Dudunsparce has free retreat, 70 HP, so it doesn't get one-shot by Phantom Dive. Free retreat, super, super nice. And then the Dudunsparce lets you shuffle itself in and draw 3 cards. That gives you a sustainable draw engine throughout the game. And then you have this Dudunsparce EX, which for 1 colorless, splashable into any deck, does 60 damage for each of your opponent's Pokemon EX, which decks play a lot of Pokemon EX. This could be doing a lot of damage, especially against decks like Raging Bolt. This just, like, completely stomps Raging Bolt. So I'd say, like, this could actually be a really good engine for some decks, playing one of these Dudunsparce EX and then the regular Dudunsparce for draw, and the regular, the Dudunsparce, the evolving one, having free retreat, meaning that it's a great starter. I think this is a really cool card. I haven't seen enough people talking about this. I think this could definitely see play. And 270 HP is honestly not bad either. Scroll through here. No, even feel the same number of cards in your hands, ignore all energy in the stack cost. 110 in Confusion is not enough to make that ability for how a great ability, not a great attack to use it with. Okay, and the Hops Corviknight, not playable at all. But Hops Double, you're definitely going to want a 4-3 line of this. I think you probably just play a 3-3, but maybe even just a 2-2. But just if you want to play the Hops deck, it's probably worth picking up a 4-3 of this, just in case you want to play with the counts. When you play this one from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. Honestly, this isn't like exclusively good in the Hops deck, right? Like, this is just a good ability in general. Just evolve and get a Gust. Yeah, I don't see anything in the ability that would force you to only play this in Hops decks. So I think it's just a good ability in general. It's a free boss. You can combine this with Ionos and Iono and boss on the same turn, basically. This is just a historically great ability. It's been good. It was good on Umbreon VMAX. It was good on Lycanroc GX. It was good on Luxray GL Level X. I think that this is just always going to be at least a semi-playable ability. It's definitely worth picking up copies of this card. Free boss on an ability is just always going to be so strong. Hops Cramorant, I do think you just need maybe 2 in case you're worried about prizing it, but you can only use this attack maybe once or twice a game. But 120 damage for 1 colorless when your opponent is at exactly 3 of her prize cards is certainly very strong. It's a lot of damage, especially when boosted by the potential plus 90 from the Hops deck. Gets up to 210 for a single energy. Definitely worth it if you're playing the Hops package already. And honestly, as just like a Pokemon that just comes in, does 120 for 1 energy, this like the Double could be decent in non-Hops decks as well. As just like a thin line. That's why I think that like the Dragapult deck with the Hops package is kind of cool, because you don't need to play like a whole deck based around the Hops engine. The Hops cards are kind of like decent in and of themselves. You can just play like a thin line of them in some other decks. Black Belt's Practice. This is already printed in Prismatic Evolutions. Brock Scouting, I think, is a great card. I think you should pick up 4 Brock Scouting. I think this will be potentially, with Forest Seal Stone out of the format, I think Lance rotates as well. This could be the new setup card. Search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon, reveal and put them in your hand. Pokemon Fan Club has been a great card. It's not always, a top tier card, but Pokemon Fan Club that has this exact text and is always at least a little bit playable when it is in format. But the fact that you can also instead just search your deck for 1 evolution Pokemon makes it even better. I think this will definitely weigh a 4 of in a lot of setup decks. I'm already playing a heavy count of this in my Dragapult list post-rotation. I think this card is incredibly, incredibly strong. Exchange Ticket. After counting your prize cards, show them and put them into the bottom of your deck. Then take the main cards from the top of your deck and put them face down as your prize cards. I'm going to say pick up maybe 2 copies of these. I don't really believe in the hype. I think this card most of the time is going to be pretty weak. I think it's much better just have more deck space, than to play this card for prizing reasons. But there are some decks where prizing is really important and you might want to play a single copy of this. So definitely worth picking up a couple copies. It just lets you get some bad cards into your prize cards. The problem is that you have to randomly put new cards in your prize cards. That could be also problematic. But, there's sometimes you just have like that one card that you really, really need out of the prizes. And you don't really care what goes back in. You just need that one card that is in there. And you don't really care enough about anything in your deck that you don't mind putting stuff randomly back in. And it's an item, so it's really easy to use. You don't have to waste a turn on a supporter for it. Hops Bag. Pick up 4 of these if you want to play the Hops deck. Probably at least 3 if you want to just play the Hops engine and something else. Search your deck for 2 basic Pokemon. Basic Hops Pokemon, put them on your bench. Just a double Nest Ball for Hops Pokemon. Very, very strong. Obviously, Buddy Poffin's great. Battle VIP Pass was great. Searching your deck for 2 basic Pokemon, putting them on your bench is really strong. Obviously, this is way more restrictive, but the Hops Pokemon benefit from this a lot. You want to be able to get Snorlax plus your attacker into play right away. So, in any deck with Hops Pokemon, it can also get you the doubles down. Any deck with Hops Pokemon, this is going to be an incredibly powerful card. Next, we have Hops Choice Band. When the Hops Pokemon this card is attached to, use an attack. That attack costs 1 colorless energy less and does 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. All of the Hops Pokemon have some sort of colorless in their attack costs, so this just reduces all of their attack costs by 1 and allows you to do 30 more damage with them. This is an insanely good card in the Hops with Hops Pokemon. You are always going to want to play these with the Hops package. I'd recommend picking up 4 because you will want to play 4 if you play it in the Hops deck specifically. But obviously you only need a few but you probably still want at least 2 or 3 if you're just playing the Hops engine in general. Iris Fading Spirit, discard a card from your hand. If you do, draw a card instead of 6 cards in your hand. I don't think this card is really going to see any play in a format where we have so many powerful draw supporters already. But it's probably worth picking up a single copy of just in case you want to try this supporter in something in a very niche deck. Just have a copy of this card for the binder. It's good having a versatile set of draw options in certain decks. So picking up niche cards like this, never a bad idea. But yeah, I cannot imagine playing a copy of this when I just play more copies of Research and Iono. Levincia. Once during your turn, each player sending player may put up to 2 basic energy cards from their discard into their hand. So obviously this is the Iono's deck card you're going to want. I'll just say pick up 4 copies of this. You might not play a full 4, but this is just an incredibly powerful card in the deck. The deck is based around accelerating a bunch of energy into play, and the Kilowattrel discards the energy from itself. So incredible synergy with the Iono's deck. You're definitely going to want to play this in it. Any deck with the Iono's engine. Lillie's Pearl. If the Lillie's Pokemon card statue is knocked out by your opponent's sack, your opponent takes 1 for your prize cards. Reducing prize cards taken. Obviously, it's very restrictive. You have to play it with Lillie's Pokemon, but still a fantastic effect. You're definitely going to want to play 4 of these in any deck with Lillie's Pokemon to make your opponent go through as many Pokemon as possible. This is definitely a very strong card. Ends Castle. Each Ends Pokemon in play has no retreat cost, so you're going to want to play at least, I'm going to say you only need 3 copies of these. I can't imagine needing to play more than that. I mean, you could pick up, we'll just say pick up 4 for the binders in case you want to play around with the counts, but I think 3 is always going to be enough for this. Just give, a lot of the Ends Pokemon do have heavy retreat costs, so reducing them by 2 is going to be, reducing them to 0 is going to be very important for maneuverability in that deck. And even if you're just playing the End Zoroarks in the Gardevoir EX deck, you're still going to probably want this to have, so that you don't get stuck in the active position. End PP up, attach a basic energy card from Toedscruel to one of your events Ends Pokemon. So this is just going to be an instant 4 of in the Ends deck for energy acceleration. It's just a dark patch for Ends Pokemon, basically. You definitely want the 4/4 copies to use to set up your Zoroark, especially if you're trying to use Darmanitan, which discards all the energy from your Zoroark. Post-Wick. Now I'm going to say we'll pick up 4 of these just in case. But this is the Hop Stadium. The attacks of your Hop Pokemon do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon, so this is the final way to boost damage. The Choice Band, Snorlax, Post-Wick, boost your damage by up to 90. Boosting damage is the name of the game for the Hops deck. You want to be able to do as much damage as possible with your attacks. So you're definitely going to want to pick these up if you're playing a Hops engine in your deck. Next, we have these Professor Research's reprints. Ruffian, discard a Pokemon tool card and a special energy from one of your opponent's Pokemon. I'm going to say pick up 2 of these. This is a good control card. This is just a good card in general. We are losing Lost Vacuum, so we don't have as much tool removal. We're also losing Giacomo, so we don't have as much special energy removal as well, although we do have Enhanced Hammer. But you can reuse this with Palpad, and it has the versatility of being able to get rid of tools as well. So Ruffian, definitely a solid card. Right off the bat, I don't think there aren't too many tools that in special energy that you need to worry a lot about early on, but getting your tools is always going to be an important option to have. So you're definitely going to want to pick up a couple of copies of these for the binder, because this will be a tech card in some decks at some point. Super Potion, heal 60 damage from one of your Pokemon. If you do discard an energy attached to that Pokemon, I'm going to say to pick up a couple copies of these just in case. Super Potion could be a decent card in a deck that requires healing and has a lot of HP, and it's like a bulky heal strategy, but I don't think that, I think it's likely that this card will probably never see any significant play. Super Potion has historically never been, it's seen like a very minor amount of play randomly in decks, but it's never been an incredibly good card. And then Spike Energy we talked about earlier, with the Lycanroc, cancels 1 colorless energy, and if it's sacked into, put 2 damage counters and attack Pokemon. I think this card is terrible. We have so many better colorless special energy, like Jet Energy, that we can take advantage of and gift it. Or I think Gift Energy rotates, but Jet Energy is, I think, going to still be, if you want to play like a colorless special energy, because you have an attack that relies on colorless energy, Jet Energy is still going to be the much better one. The fact that your opponent can play around this so easily is really weak. Your opponent can also just retreat and attack with something that the 2 damage counter is relevant to. I can't see the Spike Energy ever being very good. But that is the end of the set. Like I said, I will put the full buy list in the description below. Obviously, if you're, you can pick and choose based on what decks you actually think you might be considering building. You can pick and choose based on what I've talked about in the list, what you actually think is important, like cards like Lilligant and Ludicolo, Wailord are cards that, I would say are less important to pick up. Those are cards that are probably just going to sit in the binder, realistically. But things like Bellibolt EX or the End Zoroark, I think if you're someone who I think if you're someone who plays like very competitively and tries to build every deck, I think those are all cards that you're definitely going to want to pick up, because those decks will see some amount of play at the top tables at some point. That is going to be all for today, though. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to check out my other content, there will be links to all of my socials and other content through the link tree in the description below. Have a good one. Thank you for watching.